All right. So good evening. We have a couple of minutes before we actually start. And I was just sharing with the group how grateful and I am for the generosity. We've had some other people join us, and we've had a total of 58 people sign up for this series. And it's just been fabulous. And so even though I know you all are not on here tonight, you'll be seeing that at one time. And Robin, you had made a comment that, what did you say? You'll
I
get
said
more,
we might get more out of it than you will. I
right?
don't know.
Well, and I was just,
I feel we're lucky that you offer this. So
oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I was just going to tell her that I get a lot of this out of this as well. I consider myself a not just a teacher, but also a student. And so I've had several other colleagues ask me for this. You probably be surprised, but I do develop lesson plans. And when I develop a lesson plan, they've asked me to if I would be willing to share the lesson plan. And I want to, in this next email that you'll get, you'll have access to how I kind of prepare the lesson. And the intention of that is actually just to give you another lens and maybe a encouragement to take a look at a lesson from the lens at which you see yourself in your profession. So there are certain questions and certain, I would say, aspects of the nervous system that I like to bring forward. And so I do that with each one of these lessons. So I'm going to share that template of the first lesson that we did last week because I think it's the most important lesson. So
mm.
okay, so that'll be, and if you don't like it, want it, it's a-okay. You just let it go. Okay. And then also tonight, I want to change our video recording format that we're doing tonight, and especially going forward. So I really like to improve upon the richness of the video replay, because like I said, we have over about 58 people who are signed up for this class, and I want to give them a kind of almost a bird's eye view of what we're doing. So randomly, I'm going to select maybe 3 or 4 people to spotlight. And it actually depends upon your camera angle. I'm not seeking something out to correct or saying that, oh, this person is doing it right. I just want to provide you with a little bit more clarity. Because you know what? If you've never done lessons like this before, and believe it or not, we have a fair amount of people of nice split between practitioners and newcomers, then why should you be clear if you've never done anything like this, right? So please know that I'm going to give you enough direction so that you can explore and map out that part of the movement pattern that's missing for you, or could be present and can even be more clear. And so therefore more available for a better function. So if you'd rather not be one of those people that I spotlight, no problem. On this left-hand corner of your Zoom platform, there's something called a video feed. If you click on that video camera and there's a line that goes through it, it just means that I can't see you. Okay, so I just want you to know that. Now, it doesn't interrupt how you see me. All right, so just to let you know, you'll still be able to see me. I think you'll be able to see what's on my screen. I'm not sure, but the video review will be stellar. Okay, so I'll give you a chance to start doing that. And tonight's movement, we are going to be either on the floor, on your mat, or it could be a massage table, or it could even be on your bed. All right. And I also want to say that you're welcome to keep your shoes on or off. All right. So it has value for both. So just know that. So if you go back and repeat the lesson, you might try it with your shoes on as well. The function behind tonight's lesson is about, I would say, accessing this a latent power, something that's been hidden from you. that's going to allow you to move more comfortably from a sitting to a standing position, and perhaps even stand a little bit longer without having to lean on your arms or shift your weight from foot to foot. So in just a few seconds, I'm going to ask you to change your position. And I would like you to assess your confidence level in that. And there's three categories. There's a low, there's a medium, and there's a high. A high level of confidence is something that you would hear yourself say, I got this, boom, I'm up. There's this sense of speed, I don't think about it. Where contrastingly, a low level of confidence would be, I'd like to go faster, but I'm not sure. Maybe the pain or fear of pain, or maybe my knee collapsing. I'm going to have to take this slow. And I definitely will be using my arms. And the middle part would be somewhere in between. So as you begin to come from this sitting position, bring yourself into standing. See what your confidence level in your ability is to overcome gravity, just with that. Mhm. What rating did you give? And Lindsay, if you could mute everybody, that would be great.
Yeah, I've been doing that.
Thank you. I'll have you mute yourself too.
Okay.
So you gave yourself a level of confidence, low, medium, or high. Now, as you stand there, I want you to draw your awareness to your feet. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. It's not because I want you to change what it is you're doing. I'm asking because I want to help cultivate this observer in you, that part that sees you without judgment, that part of you that allows your ability to exercise this muscle of awareness, if you will, and help you get clear on what it is that you're doing. So your answers to these questions provide a point of reference so that later in the lesson, you can compare what's happening right now to another future now. And that this moment of awareness, I want you to think of it metaphorically like those GPS starting cues that when you ask your phone for directions, all right, and you want the GPS, it always asks you, well, where are you starting from? And that's what we're doing. This is your GPS to get a sense of where it is that you're starting from. So without looking down, I want you to begin to notice the physical distance between the right foot and the left foot. What is it? Do you take a narrow base or is it wide? And notice if you prefer to carry more of your body weight over the right foot or the left foot. Or another way of saying that is the footprint or the bottom of the foot, does it have a deeper impression on the right? Or is that deeper imprint or impression on the left? And the foot that has that deeper imprint, what's the weight distribution between the toes, the ball of the foot, and the heel of the footprint? Do you carry more of your weight forward in the foot or in the rear? And is it off to one side of that foot, more in the arch side or on the outside? And I want you to begin to assess your confidence level of standing there. How much longer could you stand? And before I ask you to rate that confidence level, I want you to draw your eyes to the screen. And you're still standing there, you're looking at the screen, and what you're looking at is the back of the torso. And this is the vertical cardinal line that we were working with last week. And you're looking at it from the back side. Do you
Carol,
the blades?
do you want to either, is your recording on speaker view or do you want to pin yourself?
Um, I can pin myself. Thank you. All right. How about that? So you're looking at yourself from the back side. And I want you to notice the back part of that vertical line. The vertebrae here are really pointy. And in tonight's lesson, we're going to be real mindful about these pointy parts of the vertebra. And it's not about pushing into that point. I'm going to draw your attention to how that vertebra is actually connected to your ribs. And so it is this part of the vertebra, the sides of the vertebra, where they come to connect to the ribs, that we are going to start to influence that vertical cardinal line of the wheels or the tires that stack up. Okay. All right. So you've been standing there enough, right? Now assess your confidence level. So you have a low, you have a middle, and you have a high. If it's low, you may have already sat down. And you know what? That is a wonderful demonstration of self-care. All right. And if you need to sit immediately. High is that you could stand here a little longer. She could keep talking, or she could ask me to do something and I would be okay. So you have another rating, another confidence level rating. Good. Now let that go and allow yourself to lie down either on your bed or your floor, your mat. So you're going to lie on your back and you're going to stretch out your legs. Mhm. Now, if that is uncomfortable for you to bring both legs long or outstretched, it's okay. You can just have one leg bent. That's fine. And notice for yourself if it just feels like, oh, wow, that floor feels great. I was ready to lie down. Feels good. Now, I want you to begin to recall those 5 cardinal lines that we looked at last week. And I want you to start to sense those lollipops of the 2 arms into the 2 legs. So we had this straight line that's moving with a ball on top. Mhm. And also include the ball that sits on top of the vertical cardinal line made of those stacked tires or wheels. Now let that image start to recede to the background. And in your mind's eye, I want you to start to look closely and see how the backs of your knees are lying on the floor. Mhm. Is one further or closer to the floor? Is there more space between one or the other, the right, the left? And how about that space above your waist? Something in that area we call the small of the back or the lumbar spine. Can you tell? It might be quite obvious. I want you to stick your hand on one side of the back and see, compare it to the right, compare it to the left. So the right hand on the right side of the low back and the left hand on the left side of the low back. See where you're more lifted or if it's more uniform. And how about the space that's between the back of the skull and the torso? As the back of the skull, that line goes down into that vertical cardinal line. Allow your hand to move up behind your neck and get a sense of the distance, how far away that area is from the floor. Good, good. And as you let that go, I want you to begin to shift your awareness from these areas that are lifted or held off the floor, these areas that create space, to now start to sense what parts of you are making contact with the floor. Feel where the floor touches and accepts the weight of yourself. It may feel like a side might be heavier than the other. And check this out. Where did you first get drawn to when you were sensing your weight? Was it the shoulders? Maybe the shoulder blades, one might feel more pointier than the other. Maybe it was along the torso and the ribs, or maybe it was the weight of your pelvis. This contact, what is accepting your weight to the floor, influences the function and the shape of your low back. How you lie there with the parts of you that are lifted juxtaposed against the parts that are sinking down. This is how you stand in the world. I want you to take that statement in very deeply. How you lie there, the parts of you that are lifted and the parts of you that are being supported by the floor, that's how you stand in the world. Often we don't know what we don't know. And so we need some kind of feedback. And lying on the floor offers us this feedback. But when we're upright in space, there's the least amount of feedback all around us. All we have is the imprint of the soles of our feet to provide the imprint, to provide the feedback. So tonight we're going to see if we can find a way to influence the nervous system so that perhaps it can let go of this holding up, this lifted, so that there's maybe less space in the areas of your scan. That there's a release of this unnecessary amount of tension or lift. And by doing so, we begin to alter this sense of weight distribution across the areas that are making contact. And perhaps it might change your level of confidence, your level of rating in your sit to stand, and in your sitting tolerance. Now, in a moment, we are going to begin to bend your knees. But I would like to do this in a very particular way. You're going to be drawing your knees up towards the direction of your chest. You're going to slide your heel along the floor. And we're first going to roll the legs in such a way that the toes are pointing towards the ceiling. So if your legs are rolled out and the toes are pointing to the out towards the side, roll them towards the ceiling. And then begin to draw your heel up in the direction of your sit bone so that the knee travels in a straight line. It doesn't hang out to the side like a frog. So you're lying on your back and you are bringing your feet what we call to standing. And in that the feet or the toes look up at the ceiling, and you begin to draw the right heel up towards your sit bone so that the knee is in parallel to the spine. The knee does not hang out to the side. Mhm. And then you draw up the other one, the left heel. And this distance, this is one of your very important PowerPoints. The distance of your heel from your sit bone really controls a lot of this lesson and controls a lot in the function of sit to stand and standing. So throughout the lesson, I want you to start to play with how what's the optimal distance that you could use so that you don't have to use a lot of muscular effort to hold your knees in this vertical plane like this over gravity. Mhm. So they don't slip or they don't slide away from your pelvis. It's comfortable, you're steady, and you're actually just doing nothing to keep them there. Another way of saying that is, can you sense how solid your footprint is on the floor to support you? And here's your first lesson in self-care tonight. I'm going to ask you to make many movements in very specific directions, slowly and in small amount of distance travel. Okay. So you're going to have the ability to choose how far within that direction you're going to go, either up or down, or right or left. And here is the absolute key to self-care and not hurting yourself. All right. Because I don't know about you, but I have been in classes before and I have treated many people who come to me who have hurt themselves in doing a class that was supposed to be healthy for them, supposed to be beneficial, and they end up hurting themselves. So here's the key. It's about moving only as far in a direction that is easy or smooth or without pain, without struggle. You won't be you won't be holding your breath, and it just absolutely feels smooth. It feels like a green light. So if you begin to really listen, cultivate this listening and interpretation, you'll be respecting yourself at a different level, and you won't bully through a movement. And when you start to cultivate this level of connection and awareness, the unconscious nervous system will open its doors to you and allow you the ability to move a bit further, to move a bit further through a range of motion, as long as the quality of movement is smooth and reversible. So begin to allow your pelvis to slowly rock along its midline. This means that you're going to start to lift the tailbone off the floor a little bit, and then you return it right back. So you're going slow enough. So some of you may not have very much distance to travel. And if it's sore, you might find that you might have to bring the tailbone into the floor before you begin to rock it in the other direction. And can you start to tell if you're pushing any part of your feet down into the floor to do this movement, or are you doing the movement independently from your feet? And as you do that, this tilting and rocking of the pelvis, there is a quality that the waist, that low back area, that space where you are examining, begins to get a little closer to the floor and a little away from the floor. Now, if you've got a scoliosis going on, that may even be really hard. It almost may, one half of you may be going further into the floor. So if there's a really big discrepancy in your space above your waist, I want you to put your hand in there. fill in the area that has the space as though we are bringing the floor up to meet that area. And as you keep your hand in that area for yourself, then begin to rock. And as you're rocking, can you begin to let your feet feel how the weight can go into your heels and help you make that rock? Now, if you feel more of your toes and the balls of your feet pushing down into the floor, just release your toes a little bit. You can lift them up, be a little twinkle toe, so that the rocking of the pelvis is actually initiated from this connection of the heels, more or less the heels, the arch, maybe some of the ball too, but primarily percentage-wise, more of the heels making this motion. Good. And as you're making this motion and this rocking and the waist comes more towards the floor, can you begin to allow the rocking of the pelvis to actually lift the pelvis from the floor? So you begin to detach the pelvis from the floor and feel how it was so important to find that perfect space for you where your heels are away from your sit bones. Feel how that distance helps allow the pelvis to detach from the floor. And then you reverse the movement and you lower the pelvis down from the floor to the floor, I should say. And then you release that contribution of the footprint. And you start again. And as you are lifting the pelvis from the floor, letting the feet initiate that movement, you'll see that as you lift a little bit higher, and for some of you who have your hand underneath your low back, it's kind of like you're rolling and lifting up over the hand. The vertebra tend to remove itself from the floor, and you can lift the pelvis a little bit higher. And all along this cardinal line, you can find places along that back of your spine where it too, the vertebra go up. Do they go up as a team? Can they go like a set of dominoes, one then after the other? Do they move some move a little faster, some move a little bit slower, and some you just absolutely skip right over? Good. And then lower back down. And now draw your feet to standing if your legs are long in that same way that we started with, heel to the sit bone, knees traveling along the vertical. Nice. And so begin again the rocking of the pelvis, initiating the feet. And so the pelvis rocks, and this rocking initiated from the feet start to lock together the lumbar spine in a very special way so that the lumbar spine can be protected. And you begin to detach the pelvis from the ground, and you start to notice this area that is just above this place where you're lifted. It doesn't matter how high you go. What matters is this connection of the feet and the pelvis. That's right. That's it. Now, with your pelvis detached from the floor, I want you to begin to let your knees, both knees, tilt a little to the right, and then you come back to center. If that feels possible for you, it may not. And then tilt it a little bit to the left. There is one direction here that says, oh yeah, that's a green light. I could do that. So you are going to tilt your knees in the direction of ease for you. It may be a little right, it may be a little bit left. Find which direction it is and only move within that range that's smooth. So you can feel your knees moving to your perfect range that's smooth. And you can also start to get a sense that the pelvis can be carried with you. Mhm. So you carry the pelvis as the pelvis is lifted in the air as the knees. So you'll do about 3, no more than 4 tilting of the knees and carrying the pelvis. And then you'll set the pelvis back down and you'll pause. This requires much more effort than you can imagine. One of the things I really like to do is to give you that clear sense of that lumbar spine. So just put your hand in the small of your back so that your little finger sits at the top of the waist and the thumb is more towards the shoulder blade. So the flat of your hand is there. And now begin to allow the pelvis to rock and the pelvis to ascend and rock over your hand very slowly. And that place above the thumb, stay there. Stay connected to the floor in that area right there. And begin to, once again, take the knees to that perfect tilt. Is it to the right? Is it to the left? Pelvis does not touch the floor, only that area above your thumb. This area is the lower thoracic vertebrae. Mhm. And see if the head could start to participate with that movement. So as the knees move in one direction, could the skull, the face roll in that direction as well? Again, 3, 4 repetitions. Mhm. And the next time you find your knees in the middle, pause, release your hand, lower that pelvis down. Release your hand, release your legs. Mhm. At any time in this lesson, you could always roll to one side. But if you're lying there on your back, recall those places that were actually lifted and had space under the knee, the low back, the neck. Since those places that actually had more contact with the floor. There's no right way to be lifted or to make contact. It's just this balance between the two, like a teeter-totter. There's not one more than the other. And once again, draw your feet to standing, the heel. Find that distance for yourself. Sit bone, heel, the distance, and maybe even the space with your feet. Do you find that you're going wide, or do you notice that your feet could be a little bit more narrow? This is underneath the sit bone. This is what it means to have feet hip distance apart. Did you know that? hmm So now bring your arms straight up to the ceiling. The elbows are straight. Let the palms face one another. And then bring your palms together. And you're making this artificial, what we call a triangle. And so that the arms are somewhere from the face to the throat or over the chest, somewhere easy. Elbows are straight. And once again, begin to allow the rocking of the pelvis that allows you really feel the feet take their weight into the ground, the pelvis will rock, and you will roll up past that lumbar to another level. And you can find for yourself with your hands in this position, even though the pelvis starts to detach, the hands are still over the chest. They're not over the head. That's right. That's right. And keeping your hands right there in that configuration, begin to allow that sweet travel of the knees a little to your right or to your left, staying in that range that was good for you, right? Can you respect yourself that says, I can take my knees in this direction. I can feel that I take my pelvis in this direction. And you know what? I'm starting to feel this weightedness that goes into my torso at that place where my ribs and my vertebra meet. I'm not just on the pointy part of my vertebra anymore. Good. And then now begin to lower the pelvis down. And as you lower the pelvis down, you take that time to let the spine, like a chain, like the dominoes, start to come down. It's a really soft landing, releasing the tension from your feet, the support that gave your pelvis, and then your arms down at your side. Good. Now, draw your feet to standing again, finding your perfect space, the distance between your heels and the sit bone. Bring your arms back to that triangle, finger to finger, the middle fingers pointing up towards the ceiling. Now, just once or twice, I want you to keep your palms together. So your hands aren't going to slide, your elbows are going to stay straight. And I want you to begin to tilt the tip of that triangle to the right, just a little, get off centered. Just notice how far you can go before your hands start to want to move or your elbows want to bend. And then you come back and then to the left. You quickly know which direction feels a little bit easier. More available is the word I would use. Okay. This movement in particularly speaks volumes to the thoracic spine. You have over 130 different joints in the ribs and the thoracic spine that highly influence your nervous system. You might start to feel your head start to roll as well. It might even slide. It might follow the hands or it might go in the opposite direction. And the next time you find your hands in the middle, let that go and let your hands be down at your side. Now, I want to tell you and share with you something really big, a big secret that really helps the low back. When we start to have this kind of side to side movement, this rotation, your thoracic spine, that place that exists above where your back of your hand rests in the small of your back, when you put that in there, that area with your little pinky by your waist and your thumb next up in the direction of your shoulder blade, anything above that area is called the thoracic spine. You were made to rotate there. You were not made to rotate in the area where the hand rests in the small of the back. So, in order to protect the back and the way it's architecturally designed, we begin to allow the feet to rock the pelvis that lifts the pelvis and brings the pelvis off the floor, not with an arch, right? So begin to bring your feet back to standing. Put your hand behind the small of your back. One of them, it's your choice. And begin to tilt the pelvis, rock the pelvis, let the feet lift and detach the pelvis, roll across your hand. Pick the lumbar up one by one off of your hand and bring that space that you're resting on your backside, somewhere above your hand. It can even be closer to the shoulder blades, or maybe even higher at the base of the neck. But that's it. Now stay lifted there. Nice. Remove your hand and bring your hands to that triangle again in that lifted place. Fingers over the chest. Just because you're lifted doesn't mean your hands have to go above your head. That's right. Now, from this place right here, begin to find that sweet spot of taking your hands a little to your right or a little to your left. Where is it? Find the arc where it is smooth that says, I've got this. And if you go slow enough in the direction of ease, you'll start to notice that all of a sudden you get to go a little further across the midline and into the other. But you want to stop right up to that area that puts a stopper or a crunch. That's right. Good. There you go. 3 or 4, and then lower yourself back down. Find your place in the middle. Next time, that's right. The next time the hands are in the middle, pause there and allow your spine to roll itself down. The reverse dominoes. The dominoes are actually stacking back up. And then let your legs be long, or you can keep your knees bent, whatever is good for you. Now, begin to draw your knees up again. Let your hands be at your side, or if you need a hand under the small of your back, that's fine too. And we're going to be sliding or rocking the pelvis again, but we're going to initiate this rock actually from the soles of our feet, so that we're not actually detaching the pelvis from the ground. We are going to roll the pelvis so that the midline of the sacrum rolls up and down as though that we could imprint the middle of that triangle. So if you push your heels into the ground, of course, you'll feel a little rock, the tailbone lifts. Now, if you stop the push, the tailbone comes back down because you're no longer rocking. What if I start to ask you to allow the heels to almost, you're not actually going to move, but it's almost like you're going to pull your heels a little closer to the sit bone. You're going to pull those heels a little closer to your sit bone. And as you pull the heels a little closer to your sit bone, it begins to let the tailbone tip a little more in contact with the floor. And then you release the pull and then you push. And so there's like this little push, pull, push, pull, push, pull with the soles of your feet that cause a rocking of the pelvis. All right, pause for a moment. Let me see if I can clarify this even a little bit further. So you notice that distance between your sit bone and your feet. I want you to make it longer this time. So that you increase the distance. So you're not as close. So you take your feet away from your sit bones. That's it. A little bit more. A little bit more. Yeah. Okay. Now from here, begin to have this sense of pushing the heels. That's right. You feel the rock, and then pull the heels, and then it rocks the pelvis in another direction. So you push the heels, the pubic bone comes toward the nose, you pull the heels, and the pubic bone goes tips down in between the feet. And you can do that a little faster with just a little bit change in speed, as though that you could push, pull, and you'll feel this little rocking of the pelvis. Some people know that as the back part of the pelvis posteriorly rocking, and then the front of the pelvis rocking. That's right. Little forward and back, little forward and back. Good. Good. Let it go. Legs long. So now let's see if we can't do this kind of jiggling or rocking with the pelvis in the air. All right. So let's see what happens because, see, the pelvis won't be rocking, but somewhere along that vertical line, that vertical cardinal line begins to rock. So bend your knees, draw your feet up. This time you have to be a little, sit bones and the distance of the heel have to be a little bit more narrow. And allow yourself to lift and detach the pelvis from the ground and find a place there that as you stay lifted, that there's this little push and pull as though that you could rock at that point of contact where you take your weight and that there is space lifted. It's a different point of contact. See if you can release your toes from having to do that. Another way of saying that is if you let your heels dump a little, that's it, dump a little more weight into your heels, as though that you could push your feet away from you, but of course we want them to stay. And if the feet stay, then the torso has to move away from the heels. Lovely. Good. And then let that go. Sometimes when we're starting to do this movement that you can start to get some cramping going on in the back of the legs or in the between the ribs themselves. Some people have had trauma to the ribs and it hasn't seen a lot of movement there. Now, let your legs be real long and bring your feet really close together. And if the inside edges of the feet can touch, that'd be great. If they can't, that's fine. Get as close or narrow the space between your two extended legs and begin to allow this push and pull with the back of your heel. See your heel now, it's the back of the heel that's on the floor rather than the bottom of the heel. And if you begin to kind of push the back of the heel so that you're pushing away, it can start to have this sense of rocking in the pelvis. And you could pull the heels a little bit towards you and then you push away. That's right. That's it. You push and pull. And with the least amount of knee bending, can you go ahead and reduce that knee bending by half so that that movement or that rocking, that jiggling comes up that central line? We know that vibration is key in releasing a lot of unnecessary holding and tension along the spine. It's almost like you feel the belly wiggle. You might even feel the face wiggle. Good. Let it go. Mhm. Now bend your knees, feet standing, and bring your triangle overhead. Mhm. And so, with your hands in this position, begin to once again rock the pelvis. Feel how the heels initiate that, rolling like a chain or dominoes falling headward, the top of the domino, the front of the spine, falling headward as you begin to lift yourself, the pelvis from the floor to a comfortable place for you. If you can't lift high, that is absolutely fine. Stay in that lifted place, the detached pelvis, your hands, your triangle over your chest, and begin to take your knees along that pathway, a little right, a little left, letting the hands at first stay in the center. Mhm. And feeling that the pelvis actually, can you let go slow enough? Yeah, reduce your speed by half. That's it, Robin. Reduce it by half so that you go slow enough so that you can capture this this place where your ribs and your spine meet. That's right. Somewhere where it's been not available for you before in that thoracic spine. And you can begin to get a sense of when your hands might follow that same pathway too. Looks almost like rolling. And knees going in the direction that is smooth and ease, as well as the arms. So they don't have to be in perfect sync, do they? No. Good. And the next time you find your knees and your hands in the center, begin to roll down one wide vertebra at a time, taking its weight through the ribs until finally the pelvis rests. The center of the sacrum, the pelvis, and the tailbone take its place, and the arms float down and take their support from the floor. And one more movement before we move into our reassessment. Draw the knees and the feet to standing again. By now, you can start to feel the power that the sense of being present to pressure can translate into power, into function. And as you start to rock the pelvis and the feet start to press, allow yourself to roll up to wherever and what level is comfortable. And you may notice that the chin here starts to do something a little different. The chin, as you start to make it easier for yourself to detach the pelvis from the floor, the chin starts to nod, doesn't it? Yeah, starts to move in a direction so that the chin starts to move the chest as the chest comes to meet and lift from the floor. And as you lower yourself down to the floor, the skull changes its place on the floor and the chin just moves back home so that now there's space. So I want you to give yourself a hug. I want you to take your arms, instead of making your triangle, put your hands somewhere underneath your armpits. Just a nice little hug. And it's your choice. You could stack elbow on elbow, or you can have the forearms crossing. Either way will work for tonight. And with this hug, I want you to begin to roll yourself a little bit, take your hug a little to the right and a little to the left. And once again, you're going to find very clearly, yep, this goes good. That goes smooth. I can do that. I notice my head and my eyes and my sockets want to go with me. Let that happen. And intentionally, with your eyes closed, you can actually look in the direction that your hug is taking you. Good. So let's see what this movement here, this hug of turning, is like when we begin to allow the pelvis to detach from the floor. Again, protecting that lumbar spine is what we're doing. So find that place where the pelvis rocks initiated through the feet and is detached from the ground. And once you're there, I want you to keep your knees still, right? Relatively still. The pelvis is relatively still as you begin to allow yourself to embrace with yourself with your arms. That's it. Rocking the upper part of the body a little right, a little left. Feeling how your elbows pull from one direction to the other. And that's what helps you move to the right. Allowing the head to turn, the eyes to turn in their sockets. Just rocking very gently. It's a nice arc. We are trying to increase the limits of your stability. That's right. Good. And then when you're ready, the next time your hug is in the middle, you can stop there and allow yourself to lower the spine, lower the pelvis down. Good. Let your arms and legs be long. And as you lie there, you allow your observer self to scan those places that were lifted. Did it change in height for you? Or maybe what was most significant for you was this ability of mm, less weightedness on one side versus the other. Mhm. A more acceptance of that vertical cardinal line of structure, of how the balls in the sockets were able to influence the shape of that line. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to change your position. And I'm going to ask you to roll onto your side, and you can pause there for a moment after you've made your assessment of what's lifted and what's connected. Just pause there for a moment. Often during this lesson, I do small parts of it, and then I lie on my side, and then I come back and reassess. You'll be able to take this lesson apart for you and find that sweet direction of either the knees moving right and left, or the hands or the rocking of the hug right and left. And as long as you stay within that sweet range, your nervous system will respond differently for you. Now, as you make your way from lying on the floor to sitting to standing, I want you to assess your confidence level: low, medium, high. What's it like for you to overcome gravity and bring yourself to standing? You might be surprised at how how parts of you may feel heavy and parts of you may have a little bit more mobility so that you bring yourself upright. Mhm. And then stand there for a moment. All right. You gave yourself a level of confidence. How, how easy was that for you? How smooth? Taking your time to move, kneeling to standing. And as you stand there, recall that distance that was between the right foot and the left foot. Has that changed for you any? And then what about the weightedness from the right foot to the left foot? Does that smooth out for you as compared to the beginning? This is your new now. Yes, this is your new now. How does your pelvis hang in between the space between your feet? This is your new GPS starting point. And take this point and walk around a bit. Mhm. And just notice what that is in taking your mm, GPS signal. And then allow yourself to come back to the mat. Mhm. Good. And just recall for yourself if there's any change for you in that confidence level from sit to stand and your confidence level in standing. How long could you stand like this now? hmm Yeah, something's different. And when we start to notice these differences, what happens is as we get more and more conscious about them, we have that ability to be able to choose something different. But until we know what it is we're doing, we can't do really anything else. It's just an automatic, reflexive. And that's what awareness and observation is about, becoming that powerful observer in yourself. Okay. Now let that go and bring yourself to a comfortable place and sitting. And I want to thank you for going over just a little bit and your patience of since we lost power there. And what I'll do is I'll be able to infuse both of these recordings so that you'll have it in its completeness. So you're starting to get the idea that we are seeing ourselves in this image in this series, that we're more than just these lines of structure, right? We are the lines of structure and, right? There's an and to this. And the and is this connection of, like I call the lollipop or the ball that sits on top that influences the line. So as we take the knees from side to side, we start to impact the lower girdle. And as we take the triangle or the hug, we begin to impact the upper part of the girdle, restoring this incredible potential of the thoracic spine and all of its fingers and connections to the ribs, making it safe for us to be up against gravity, a little more comfortable, a little more available. So I'm going to bring my part to a close, and if this is the time if you'd like to have any thoughts or something that you like to share in what it is that you've noticed, we welcome that as well. So if there's a ability down at the bottom of your Zoom, and it's called reactions, and there is a lot of these what's called emojis, and one of these emojis says raise hand, and if you click on that and you want to say something, we'd love to hear from you. If not, stay in that sweet space. Okay. All right, Mila.
Hi, Carol.
Hello.
Carol, something you just said like 1 minute ago was, as we notice, I noticed big differences in how I was standing. And as we notice this difference, we have a choice to choose to stand that way. That's so new to me. I always thought I had to get to that same position, I had to do the lesson again.
Oh,
So how, like, when I choose to stand, with more balance, both feet supporting my weight, the soles of the feet evenly supporting, not one edge over the other.
mhm.
How do I choose that way, by making adjustments as I stand, or
Mhm.
just hope it will happen, cross my fingers and hope it will happen?
Well, I want to tell you that you have a lot more influence than just hoping something is going to happen, right? So you know for yourself, as you said it so beautifully, if I choose to, I'm standing, and my choice is to stand with a little more balance. You know what balance means to Mila, right? You know what it means to her. It's not just backing into this right heel anymore. It's like you can start to get a sense that it's not just shifting your weight to the foot, from one foot to the other and feeling precariously. You know that there's something that happens through the center of you, that where the pelvis got carried, there's something that you can access through your knees. If you think about, right, and I know with your knee issue, if you think about just standing there, and if you're standing, you can try this, your knees can sway a little to the right, a little to the left, and that's going to impact your footprint, doesn't it? You just think the knees. And the knees, what did we do in this lesson? We allowed the pelvis to be carried with the knees. That was a special one, right? I don't know if you got that or not, but you allowed the knees and the pelvis to be carried with the knees. And then, of course, you did your little triangle and you could do your little hug, right? And we allowed the turning, the rolling, and we allowed the head to roll. You could do something of that nature all in standing, and you would impact the quality of the soles of your feet. And no one actually would need to know that you're doing anything. And that's how you can choose to be more in balance that feels good to you. And that's what releases this unnecessary holding and tension in the nervous system. Okay?
Wow, got it. Thank you, Carol. What a revelation.
Good, 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 good. Yes, Miss Robin.
I was amazed how much the space on my low back changed, how many times during the whole procedure process. Bigger, smaller, heavier, lighter, everything, every time. It was really neat.
Yeah, wonderful. That space in the low back, we're not here to make everybody have a flat back, right?
Mhm.
But I am here to help you find this support of how the lumbar vertebra reach in and connect to one another and provide this kind of movement in the sagittal plane to make it available, right? So that when the knees move from side to side and the pelvis is moving from side to side, you are not wringing out like a jar lid your low back.
Back.
And that is so important. And for those of us who may have scoliosis, where it is very clear that one side is really lifted and one side is pressed.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you begin to fill in the gap with your other hand and feel yourself roll over that space to bring contact to an area that hasn't been, will allow the nervous system to say, huh, really? Okay, well, I can release my tension there on, you might think of it as quadratus lumborum or wherever your reference is muscularly. That's fine. But what happens is it feels support. If the nervous system feels support, then you're not having to pull on certain joints and tendons in order to do the action that could more easily be done, like get up off the toilet. This is what the importance of this lesson is. Get out of the chair, get up off the toilet. How can you stand at the grocery center, or do you do you have to lean on the cart, right? Are you looking for a place to sit down? Or are you furniture walking? Right? So it's about really empowering, and I haven't decided on the name of this, but it's something about finding the power that exists in sit to stand and in just pure standing. Pure standing.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay, we have time for one more comment or question, and we'll come to a close. Feel good? Fantastic. Good. All right, we'll see you here next week, and hopefully no power outages. And I'll be converting this for you and getting it up and sending you another email letting you know that it's ready. Okay. All righty. Bye for now.